Good evening. Welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson, and this is the news. The Public Prosecutor General will submit a motion to the Deputy Marshal of the Sejm on making Member of Parliament Stefan Niesiołowski subject to criminal responsibility. The Łódź Prosecutor's Office will lay charges of corruption against the MP. The motion seeks to remove the immunity which he currently enjoys as an MP.
Sporo pracowało w tym tygodniu Centralne Biuro Antykorupcyjne. W poniedziałek zatrzymano 6 osób, w tym byłego rzecznika Ministerstwa Obrony Narodowej
On Monday, the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau arrested 6 people, including the former spokesman of the Ministry of National Defense, Bartłomiej M., and people connected to the Polish armaments group. On Tuesday, the former director of the Lotos oil and gas giant was arrested, and today 3 businessmen from Łódź who were said to have corrupted the former MP of the Civic Platform Party, Stefan Niesiołowski, in exchange making up contracts of companies in the state treasury and transactions of beneficial decisions made by the Łódź city government. According to journalists who referred to investigators, there were around 30 mentioned services from 2013 to 2015. The prosecutor's office is thought to have tapes of the MP who denies everything. Asked today, he claimed that all this is a provocation to divert attention from the scandal concerning the leader of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczyński's taped conversation.
If the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau wants to arrest me, then I don't know. Please, go to Kamiński. I don't know anything. I don't have any charges put, I don't know those businessmen, I don't have their surnames. Please, ask those geniuses from CAB about everything. I think this is all to hide Kaczyński. I've already answered, I don't know those businessmen. It is a classic cover-up for Kaczyński's tapes. They made that up. Please ask Mr. Wójcik and Kamiński. I am not from the CAB. I didn't take any payoffs.
Dziennikarze portalu Wirtualna Polska twierdzą, że śledczy są
According to Wirtualna Polska journalists, investigators have tapes with conversations of the 3 businessmen arrested. Contracts in exchange for sexual services may concern the police chemical plant company. The media unofficially states that the National Public Prosecutor's Office is going to submit a motion on removing the immunity of the MP Stefan Niesiołowski.
Nieoficjalnie informują media.
Today, Robert Nowacek, an attorney nicknamed the Shark of Reprivatization, appeared before a government commission investigating the reprivatization of real estate in Warsaw. According to the commission, he is one of the key figures in what has become a scandal in the capital, and his appearance was described by one commentator as a show of pomposity and arrogance. His sister and Marzena K. also testified before the commission.
Attorney Robert Nowacek, nicknamed the Shark of Warsaw Reprivatization, gave selective answers during a several hours of questioning before the commission. The question is whether what he testified in the investigation is true or what he actually testified before the commission today. The witness repeatedly descended into polemic with the commission, questioning the legal basis for his being questioned. I will not be answering any questions in front of this commission. I will answer before the judge. Nowacek answered a series of questions regarding his knowledge and cooperation with other lawyers involved in the wild reprivatization, as well as officials from the Warsaw City Hall. He revealed that there were irregularities in the functioning of BGN. He pointed to his relations, including private relations with officials, and he explained certain mechanics of the City Hall's operation. During the interrogation, Nowacek took up the subject of real estate at Srebrna 16, the address which became well known after the publication by Gazeta Wyborcza, the so-called Kaczyński tapes. During the investigation, Nowacek was involved in verbal disputes with the commission. He was better than a Polish cabaret. It is evident that he is enjoying himself, ignoring the commission's questions, laughing. His testimony does not compete with him in his profession. Unfortunately, the other party is the most offended. Robert Nowacek has acted as a proxy and beneficiary for dozens of reprivatization cases in Warsaw for 20 years. According to media reports, he is said to have earned at least several dozen million zlotys. His media renown was gained as a result of the reprivatization scandal, in particular after the reprivatization of the plot of land at the Palace of Culture and Science. According to a commission report, Warsaw lost about 21 billion zlotys on the wild reprivatization of Warsaw real estate.
The Vice President of the United States of America, Mike Pence, has confirmed that he will attend an international conference regarding the Middle East to be held in Warsaw in mid-February. The political summit, to be led by the United States and Poland, still raises a number of questions.
The conference will take place on the 13th and 14th of February in Warsaw. Poland will not just be the event's host, but also the main organizer alongside the United States. Several dozen politicians are set to participate in the event, most of whom are ministers of foreign affairs of their respective countries. However, in case of the United States, Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, will appear alongside the US Vice President Mike Pence. I can now confirm that Mike Pence will participate in the Conference on Peace in the Middle East. On one hand, it is great news as the Vice President's presence will elevate the prestige of the event. Moreover, this will also be a great opportunity for our President Andrzej Duda to have talks with the US representative. Finally, this is a statement to how good the relationship between Poland and the United States is. The information concerning the US Vice President's visit is in itself a confirmation of the fact that the conference will occur at all. Up to this point, that was not entirely certain. The conference is said to be tackling the problems in the Middle East, however, the agenda remains unknown. Mike Pence's visit in Europe will last 3 days. The US Vice President also declared that he will also visit Germany. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, also accepted the invitation and will be present during the conference. Conversely, Russia declined the invitation, while Iran was not invited at all.
A blast of polar air brought record low temperatures to much of the United States Midwest and blistering cold across much of the Northeast on January the 30th, causing even rubbish collections to be cancelled, halting the mail and forcing residents, who pride themselves on their winter hardiness, to huddle indoors. Temperatures hovered around -18 degrees Fahrenheit or -28 degrees Celsius.
A blast of icy polar air brought dangerously low temperatures to the USA. Midwest on Wednesday, January 30th, causing at least 3 deaths. At least a dozen deaths related to extreme cold weather have been reported since Saturday, January 26th in Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, according to officials and media reports. In Chicago and the Pennsylvania city of Erie, people were seen braving the painfully cold weather in heavy winter clothing as temperatures hovered around -18 degrees Fahrenheit or -28 Celsius. The bitter cold is being carried by the polar vortex, a stream of cold air that spins around the stratosphere over the North Pole, but whose current has been disrupted and is now pushing south. Officials opened warming centers across the Midwest, and in Chicago, police stations were open to anyone seeking refuge. 5 city buses were also deployed to serve as mobile warming centers for homeless people, while city police handed out hats, jackets, and blankets.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Do stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business, and more Poland Daily programming. But from me, it's have a good night and have a better tomorrow.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. It will be a quite cloudless night with some snowfall expected in the area of Rzeszów, Lublin, Kraków and Koszalin. Temperatures ranging from -7 degrees in Olsztyn to -1 degree in Pomorze. And now over to tomorrow. A beautiful sunny day with some snow only in central Poland and in the northwest. The temperatures will range from 1 degree in the northeast to 4 in Wrocław and Kraków. A lot of sun is expected in Podkarpacie. Pressure will drop. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. Temperatures will significantly grow up to 8 degrees in the southwest. On Sunday, more sun is expected in central and southeastern Poland. Slightly cooler on Monday with 1 to 2 degrees in the west. We will also see some rain in the east and in central Poland. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Kamil Gancarz, chairman of the board of Blockchain Development Foundation. Sir, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon.
We will talk about, I guess our viewers already guessed it, about the blockchain. So tell us how it started. Where are the beginnings of the blockchain technology?
Mm-hmm. The beginnings of blockchain technology is related to the crisis in 2008 in the United States, where the Lehman Brothers gone bankrupt. Basically, though that time the problem with financial markets there were quite heavily influencing the whole economy and banking system. So there was an idea that we need to start to create money outside the banking system, outside the
bankers at the time had very poor reputation. They took government money to bail out, and then they paid premiums for themselves.
Exactly. So that was quite a big issue to address, and people also experience heavy inflation. Maybe not in States, but look to Argentina, look into Venezuela nowadays. So you can imagine that money is not always safe with governments. Therefore, there was an issue to address. So the group, or the person, Satoshi Nakamoto, how they like to refer to, created the system of Bitcoin, which is based on blockchain technology. And blockchain technology is the distributed ledger where you can prove that some file, some document is original, and you can send that original file, original document to other recipient. What that makes is that it enables you to send money over the technology. Because if I take $100 bill and pass it to you, then I don't have that $1 bill, and you are enriched by that note.
But you also don't have a printer. You cannot print infinite number of copies of this $1 bill and pass it to somebody else.
So it's quite opposite that sending an email, when you can send the same information to unlimited amount of recipients, like spam does nowadays. So if we use a blockchain technology, we are able to send original, and in that case we can able to create the money, which are scarce, which are limited in there is a finite number of coins, and it can be transferred over the network. So for a Bitcoin, we have a limit of 21 million Bitcoins that can be created. And it will be created in, the whole number will be mined in 2140. And in 2036, there would be 99.9% of Bitcoins mined. So there is a logarithmic system which is reducing the number of mined Bitcoins per each exact time stated in the technology.
Okay, we probably don't have a time to explain what kind of mathematical formula are behind the Bitcoin, but we can tell what is the formula behind the Bitcoin value, because it also varies against the market, and right now is quite low.
Quite low. It depends how we look at in which way we look at that market.
This is virtual
price.
Money created out of nothing, and suddenly, what is the price today?
$3,445. $3,445.
Right.
US.
And only 2 years ago.
And 2 years ago, by the end of 2017, it was $20,065 per one Bitcoin.
That's quite a slide.
Okay, but if we look from other perspective, when in 2010, exactly to be precise, 22nd May, there was a transaction in United States of America where buying 2 pizzas for roughly $30 cost 10,000 Bitcoins. 10,000 Bitcoins, which translates into that one.
Pizza owner is right now one of the most of the richest person in the United States.
Pizza delivery guy, basically. Yes. So if we take into the account that price from 2010, we will get the price 0.3 cents US. So the actually upturn is 115 millions% to this date. For today. So, I mean, it depends how we look at the subject. So.
Okay, we are accustomed to the money that are being created by governments. Okay, by banks in a fiduciary system, but still there is a government that stays behind the money. We kind of tell that because most of the money are created in order to create real estates. The real foundation of the money is not gold, not silver, but brick and mortar and concrete. But still there is something physical behind the money, more or less. But in this situation, we have only technology and mathematical formula.
I won't fully agree with the statement that there is some brick and mortar thing behind the fiat money. Basically, it's law regulation that are stating the value, and also income taxes and other taxes are creating a demand for the money. So that's why money, national fiat money, is demanded, because you need to pay taxes in that currency. Without the taxes, there wouldn't be enough demand for the money and people can switch to another currency. So for the blockchain, the scarcity of coins created, especially for Bitcoin, is making that the value grows over time. Of course, there is quite a volatile market there, but we need to understand that this disruptive new technology. We have also bubbles. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is a bubble as a whole, but there are locally bubbles appear, because if it's higher demand, it draws also speculative demand, and speculative demand creates a bubble. So often there would be bubbles appearing into blockchain technology and blockchain market, blockchain cryptocurrencies. So we'll see that in future also. But also bubbles create some possibility to take advantage of.
Yeah, we saw the bubble on the real estate market, which is
exactly
perfectly physical and visible. So those things and those barriers are being crossed both ways.
And we need to understand that also that bubble on real estate was created by system and the fiduciary money that is created by government, because newly created money often goes to real estate markets, which drives prices up and heavily drives those prices. So banks are more prone to lend money for buying real estate than to other consumer goods. So we need to remember that why is the real estate market going so crazy? Because of created new money, which are often going to real estate.
Well, that's true. On the other hand, the banks have the safest bet on something that's there and it's growing, rather than something that is more flimsy or speculative. Sir, this is very interesting topic, the Bitcoin and the blockchain, first of all, and we will continue in the next show. So far, thank you very much for participating. Kamil Gancarz, Blockchain Development Foundation, Chairman of the Board. Thank you very much for this conversation. And we will, please stay with Poland Daily Business, because this topic will be here in the next emission and the next broadcasts.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. A beautiful sunny day with some snow only in central Poland and in the northwest. The temperatures will range from 1 degree in the northeast to 4 in Wrocław and Kraków. A lot of sun is expected in Podkarpacia. Pressure will drop. And now let's see the forecast for our continent. In northern and eastern Europe will appear more snowfall. The lowest temperatures -4 degrees in Oslo. In Central Europe, temperatures ranging about -1 to 2 degrees. The hottest capital city in Europe will be Athens, with 16 degrees. On the Iberian Peninsula, we will see some sun and rainfall. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Stephen Thompson was born in Great Britain. He is the author of short educational films about Poland, its history, and its current events. These popular films are often focused on setting the record straight in the foreign media, which often seems to misunderstand what's happening in contemporary Poland as well as the historical past. His films are in English and designed to address a foreign audience, which all too often believes that the Second World War began in 1941, or that Poles attacked Germany.
Our guest today is Stephen Thompson, who's a journalist as well as a filmmaker. How do you think, in 10 or 15 years, how do you think that will change? What will people's perception on Poland be then?
Firstly, I think it's very important that actually the Poles who moved to the UK after 2004 don't stay there. I would like them to come back home, because I think they are a social capital that we need here, both economically and demographically, and we need that energy and that entrepreneurial spirit and that drive here. I don't think it's actually necessarily a net beneficial thing to have so many Poles in the UK. I believe that the image of Poland in the next 10, 15 years is going to change in a way that is very radical. If the politics of this country do not drastically change and do not drastically shift, and if the relative status quo of economic growth combined with political conservatism is maintained, combined with a destabilization and a stagnation of the West, and we see that today in the political climates in both the UK, which is mired in a relatively disastrous Brexit debate. We see it with the Gilets jaunes in France. We see it in political instability all across Western Europe and the US. The deeper that crisis becomes, the more Poland will be seen no longer as a sort of poorer, slightly unknown neighbor. It will be seen as a bastion of a way to govern and conduct and run a country, especially if this incredible economic growth, which has been maintained in an uninterrupted way and which has survived the economic recession. I mean, Poland didn't have an economic recession when half the world was mired in economic crisis. So if that is maintained, I think Poland will be seen as a country to emulate, and will no longer have this sort of negative stereotype of that Polish cleaner and of that Polish plumber. And I think things are definitely going that way, and I hope that they will continue to go that way. But as I said in the beginning, to me it is very important that the large portion of migrants that left, that they return home, because there is a demographic, there are problems in Poland, and we have to confront them openly, and one of those problems is demographics. And certainly we need those people, and I think it is Poland's duty as a country not to fight for their rights abroad, but to fight for their ability to have a decent and dignified life here.
Mm. And how do you feel your friends in Poland feel about your art, your filmmaking, and your perception on the world? And
I think
your films are quite controversial. Some of them might be to some people. They show a clear statement.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, yes. Some of the things I have said have been considered controversial. I think, broadly speaking, I think that no matter how much I choose and want to identify as a Pole, I will always be seen by Polish people as an outsider. I don't think I will ever be entirely accepted as someone who's from here. My surname is undeniably not Polish, and even my Polish, despite the fact that I think I speak a relatively good Polish, I think nonetheless there is a hint of an accent that is still there. So I don't think I obviously, of course, having grown up abroad, I don't have any of the cultural references. I don't share necessarily the same sense of humor. So I think I will always be seen as an outsider, as a benevolent outsider perhaps, as a kind outsider, as someone who does their best for Poland, but nonetheless I think I will always be seen as not quite from here. And I don't mind that. I think that's fair enough. I think I am not entirely from here. So I don't necessarily mind that. Most of my friends, of course, share my interpretation and my view and my analysis and my views on history, and they don't see anything of what I've said or what I've done as they don't see it as controversial. I have tried to make friends on both sides of the political and cultural spectrum, and I have had quite large and long debates about especially the role of Poland during the Second World War in relation to the Holocaust. And I try to, in fact, go and engage in a debate with the other side. I go, for example, to very left-leaning theatres, especially now on the 50th anniversary of the March events of 1968. I did engage with a wide range of analysis, research, and art on the other side of the cultural spectrum, and I think it is possible to have. I think some people think it's not possible, but I do believe it is possible to have a polite, a reasonable, a civilized, and a constructive, overall a constructive debate on both sides. And I think that is something that I try to do. I would like to not only defend and present this historical truth which has been misconstrued, I would also like to introduce a level of discourse and a narrative that is civilized, that is polite, and that is respectful of the other side. And I think that is something perhaps that is lacking in the political debate for a variety of reasons, especially the consequences of communism in Poland, which I think are still very severely felt in political debate. And that is something to impact, even in a very slight degree, the culture, the political culture, and the culture of debate. That is something that I would like to change. And I think that is something that many of my friends, especially those who come from the other side of the political spectrum, have said to me themselves that they might not agree with what I say, but they like the way I say it.
I agree.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're probably the right person to ask this. How do you think our generation should be allowed to promote what's valuable about Poland abroad or even within the country?
How should we do it?
Yes.
I think first and foremost, I think the way to do it is by being a civilized and a decent person. I think people engage with people, despite the fact that very obviously anecdote is not data. Most people interpret anecdote as data. If they've met a Pole who was a drunk, they will interpret Poles as drunks. And that's not necessarily reflective, but anecdote to many ends up being data. So I think that is the most important thing, is first and foremost to be the best version of oneself that one can be. And that can be done in a myriad of ways, including, of course, I think one of the things, unfortunately, that Poles did do in a large extent in the UK when they arrived after 2004 was there was a lot of swearing, to the extent that some of these Polish swear words were recognized by English speakers. And I think that is an example, a counterexample of how one should conduct one's one's PR. So I think that is the first and foremost, that is the best way to actually engage and to shift a narrative, is for the people to represent a given level. And it's a question of reconstructing our elites, which were completely and utterly wiped out. The Germans walked in 1939 with a list of 61,000 political and intelligentsia leaders. Most of those people were killed. The Russians walked in, the Soviets walked in with similar lists. 20,000 people were killed in Katyn, and on and on and on, and then 200,000 people were wiped out in the Warsaw Uprising. These elites have been wiped out, and the remnants of these pre-war elites were then kept down during communist times. We now have a process, and that process it's a question of time, and it will happen, but it needs time. And then, of course, I think that the other way that one can shift a narrative is of course, by pouring money into public relations campaigns. And those, I think, should be modeled in two ways. They should be modeled on the German model, which has been incredibly effective and incredibly successful. The Germans have been very, very good at whitewashing their crimes, to the extent that every single film that comes out about World War II will have a good German in it, which it does not reflect the reality of German occupation of most of Europe. So that is one way, is of that very discrete impact, the way the Germans have done it. And the other way is, of course, the brash, the American way, which is of pumping that patriotism and that love of one's country and one's greatness, perceived or real, and doing, among other things, there's incredible Hollywood productions about great Americans, and I think Polish history is a very rich source to pick from. I think there are so many heroes to pick from that one would struggle to actually to portray even a tiny fragment of them, and that's something I think we should do as well. So I think that's threefold. It's having citizens that are responsible and that want to promote their country. It's having an astute political leadership, and it's having the money and the resources and the brashness and the boldness of doing it the American way, and of being completely unashamed about it.
Thank you. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you very much, Paula. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, today on Poland Daily History, we will explore in depth the history of the szabla, or the Polish saber. This is the weapon that is immortalized by the Polish wing hussars that spread fear throughout European history, and it was used to save Christianity in the famous Battle of Vienna. Today, we will talk to the expert, Marcin Bąk, an instructor of fencing and historical fencing. And later on in the program, he will teach us a few moves. When we talk about fencing in Poland and the rest of Europe during the 19th century, I was wondering if you can elaborate on the difference between the styles of Poland and the rest of Europe.
By the 19th century, the saber looked very different. This isn't just about its look, but the way it is used as a weapon. This is a military saber, or one used for duels. A more Western one, based on parrying and ripostes. We will show what that is later. There are two main styles, in fact, two main schools at the time in Europe and in Poland. These are Hungarian school and the Italian school. Here we have examples of sabers. Here, Italian sabers that are used for duels at the time. They are very narrow and very light, but one could also inflict wounds with such a sharp saber. It's particularly interesting, today's fencing, as a sport sprung from this 19th century duel fencing. Here we have sports sabers. but they come directly from the 19th century school of dual sabres. It's different to the past battle sabre. In most cases, duels only go on until the first wound is inflicted. There are no horrific cuts, taking off somebody's head or their arm. It's taught with a slight, gentle movement to cut the arm or face, and this is more or less how today's sports fencers fight. It's a light weapon. They move and swipe very quickly. The swipes can also be quite strong in competitions. When fencers take off their fencing jackets, you can see bloody plasters underneath. But this is caused by the fact that today's athletes are very strong and very athletic. Of course, the aim in sports fencing isn't to hack off somebody's arm or head. Because Poles were under petitions and couldn't develop their own school and style of fencing, they went to fencing clubs where the Western Italian style was used, or the style of the Hungarians, who have been our close friends since times immemorial. There we tried to uphold this military tradition of the past.
So there's also a difference between the Italian and the Hungarian school of fencing. Can you elaborate on it?
This is interesting because Italians and Hungarians competed in duels. Well, their students did. It was about money. It was about having the best schooling system. The Italian school, Italian style, is easily recognizable. Even now, you can sometimes see this in the sport. They take a very long stride when positioning themselves and stretch themselves out. They hold the weapon very far from themselves, pointed at the opponent. This occurs very rarely these days. It's a very difficult style to teach and is very demanding on the body. The body has to be well developed, the legs well stretched. Moving about in this style is difficult and it can be quite dangerous. The Hungarian style is what we see these days, 90% of the time. The competitor has a narrow stance. The sabre is low, close to the body. This is a posture typical of the Hungarian school. It turned out to be statistically more effective than its Italian counterpart. It isn't that the Italian style was good for nothing, but it's very difficult to teach. It's more difficult to move about in, and the Hungarian ones simply turned out to be better in the long run.
Position. Okay. I zaczynamy. O. Relax your arm. Ustal taką odległość, żebyś mnie trafiał. Small step to me. Okay. Small. Oh yes. Faster. With more speed. Yes. Okay. Be careful. Okay. Now, open your eyes. Be careful. Be careful. Relax. This is the main parade, the fifth parade in the fencing with saber. You can do it like this. Small circulation, yes, and lift your weapon to the fifth parade. Yes, hop, 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 hop. To me, and very slowly. Hop and hop. Okay, very good. You can parade my blade by the first parade. Slowly. Hop, hop. Very good. Once again, you have to start. Do it when you see the beginning of my attack. Yes. And answer by the cut to my head. Ready? To my head. My mask, exactly. Relax your arm. And once again. Slowly. It's not. You don't need balance your body. Only arm. Hop, 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 hop. Ready? Ready? Hop, hop. Very good. Hop, hop. Hop. Okay. And the same exercise with steps. Faster, faster. This is the surprise. Once again. Okay. Good, very good.
Today, we have explored the history and the usage of the Polish szabla that is iconic to Poland history and have been with Poland throughout years of war. And that's it for today. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily.
Hello, and welcome to Poland Daily Travel. In this and the next few shows, we're continuing to go behind the scenes in Warsaw. We'll be looking at stories of the reconstruction of the city after World War II. In 1945, Warsaw lay 85% destroyed. It had been known as the Paris of the East because of its Baroque beauty. Its once famous elegance can still be found by those who look beneath the surface, and that's just what we're going to do with our guide, Wojtek Młatkowski, from Warsaw Behind the Scenes. So stay with us as we explore the rebuilding of Warsaw. Stay tuned to Poland Daily Travel. And if you like what you see, catch us on YouTube.
Now we will drive along the Marszałkowska Street, which is technically the biggest street of this city here, and like an axis, yes, and this town has two such streets that are so important. Aleje Ujazdowskie, we will cross it later the drive, and here Marszałkowska. And now we get into a part of this street that has some old blocks on the right-hand side. One of those blocks will be especially important in August, every year in August, and it will be the block of a telephone company that was very heavily fought for in the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. It's the building called Pasta, right on our right-hand side, close to today's Bank of China. And then we travel by this eastern facade of Palace of Culture, which is the main entry towards this enormous building in here. Oh, it's really a great structure, still controversial. Some 10% of Warsaw people don't like it so much that they would like to see it down, yes? But 90% of people have adopted that unwanted child of the communism and started to like it, to really love it, you know, because it's just good architecture, despite the bad days in which it was done, and despite the bad guys that are behind this palace on the right-hand side here. And left-hand side, completely surprising, those buildings would be from 1960s. They look very modern, absolutely. They are full with very modern advertisements in here. Some Polish brands in there, like Reserved or TK Maxx. That's TK Maxx in Poland. I know everybody tells me it's not TJ Maxx, but it's TK Maxx here. And then we steer by these large halls here. And then we cross this junction between Aleje Jerozolimskie and Marszałkowska, and right-hand side, over there, a beautiful old-fashioned building, a hotel, Polonia Palace. It sounds posh and it sounds a little bit exaggerated, but it's completely right. This is how this place was named more than 100 years ago. This building survived World War II in a perfect condition. You know, Germans just moved out, and like the same day, Polish and Russians moved in. Even while rebuilding Warsaw and while the biggest plans were made that changed the city so much, this building remained in those plans. And we have a picture that states this, and I will show this picture to you sooner or later. And ahead of us, a very tiny building with a very big screen on top of that, that tells you right at this moment how much the Swiss franc is. It's a big issue for Polish people. And down there, a lot of combination of characters, of numbers, and that's the public debt of Poland. Yeah, that's a quite scary number that goes up every second or every second. And now we drive all the time along the Marszałkowska Street towards a church and towards a district called MDM. Of course, that's the abbreviation. We don't have such short words in this language. The real word for that, for the district that we are heading to, is Marszałkowska Dzielnica Mieszkaniowa. Yes, it does sound complicated even to me. It does, yeah? And of course, this main street of Warsaw is crowned with a church. Back in 1950s, as people renovated this area, they had a real plan to make this church without the towers. But, sometimes it happens that it is just enough to say that Germans have destroyed those towers, and that's why the Committee of Reconstruction of Warsaw did allow those towers to crown the main communist street here. That was the place for the 1st of May parades. So in case of Poland, sometimes the Catholic Church has won the competition with the communist regime for the souls of people and for their place in Warsaw architecture. In here, all of the right-hand side buildings, they got taken out while the city was reconstructed. Some of them were pretty good in 1945, but still the local committee on rebuilding the capital has chosen to demolish them and to replace them with newer and often better constructions. We know that those old constructions, they have been very fancy, but very fancy on the front. The back was not so good. And here we got houses with flats of equal standard, both in the front and in the back of the house. And that's a kind of progress. left-hand side of here, you can see a mixture of pre-World War II housing and post-World War II housing. And it tells you the differences and the similarities. Well, I couldn't use the brakes. We got on deep green that looks like yellow because, you know, we have to be careful about our cameraman back there. They are on slippery benches. This is a car like that, yes? But it's all completely street legal. It was produced in a way. And yes, you know, you have seen it right. There are no seat belts in here. Just because, as some of you might know, seat belts were not required in 1980s. Driving in Warsaw is not that very bad. We of course complain, but it's complaining on a quite high level.
Compared
to every other town in Europe,
yeah,
really, like of this
cities.
Size, of course.
Yeah, there's about 3 million people in the metropolitan area.
Yeah, in the metropolitan area, but I assume it's like 2 million people within the city, which is still not bad, isn't it? But it's also not enormous. It's just fine. And not far away from here, we will be in a completely different area. It will be like totally opposite to what we see right here. Yes, let's go. This is as far as towards those big buildings ahead of us, like 1.5 up to 2, isn't it?
Yeah, but, yeah, 1.5 to 2.
Could be.
I wouldn't think more than that. A little over a mile, perhaps.
Yeah, like a mile is a good way to measure things in here. It's better. It's somehow intuitive, isn't it? With those miles. Yes. 1.6. Wow. Now we pass by the American embassy with a great big fat American SUV parking in front of that and getting into the gate. I don't know if the gate was built for such big cars. So, but mine is higher. You see, this Żuk is taller than this Suburban over there.
Yeah,
well,
Suburban is nothing on a Żuk.
This is so much taller. I could see the roof. Yeah. Even from my position here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a car you look down to some other cars.
There's some nice houses along here.
Yeah, those palaces along the Ujazdowski Avenue.
And there used to be a palace here where the American embassy is. It was called the Potocki Palace, I think.
Take a look to the right-hand side, to this quite futuristic pavilions in here. That one is pretty new, yes? That's an art gallery and stuff like that. But here, that looks very French, isn't it? The French embassy.
Yeah, very
so
French.
modernistic.
Yeah.
It looks like hovering above the ground here.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it was intended to look. Yeah. We don't go into the village street, Wiejska Street, with the parliament, but we go into a village, yes? Into a wieś.